Hey there, travelers, it's your DM Lucas. I am back to bring you another lovely podcast. As you know, for I think since June, we have been helping promote marginalized creators in the TTRPG community and trying to help promote their podcasts using our feed and the lovely audience that you are. Just trying to showcase some more new shows for you to give a listen to and to really help shine a spotlight on these creators. We have a new one in today. I was sent, and it is called A Couple of Characters. So here's a little intro that they actually sent me. There are a ton of actual play D&D podcasts out there, but A Couple of Characters focuses on the characters you've never had the chance to play. Join Quinn and Alex as they talk about the fun characters they created and give advice about how to make your own quirky characters. And another thing Alex really wanted me to speak on, and I think this is actually important because often it gets a little bit lost in the mix, especially with everything going on lately. When we speak of marginalized people, there is a lot that falls under that umbrella. Of course, we talk about race, we talk about there's even gender, sexuality, but there's also disability. Alex themselves are legally blind, and we have a lot of TTRPG creators out here who have differences in ability. We had just quite a big discussion throughout the Twitter sphere, I don't know if you've seen it, about the importance of having things in your podcast for things like a D&D wheelchair. For instance, it was a combat wheelchair. There was actually a really sad and large amount of pushback on it. And that shouldn't really be the case. If somebody wishes to explore that, or they themselves experience that and they want that for their character in the game, then we should be okay with allowing people to have this in the game. Because first of all, it's magic, monsters, and you name it in these games. It's not a bad thing to have this diversity and ability, especially in your games. Like, if you think about it, I really don't think there is enough diversity in our own games. It's, even with Ballad. Let's say you have a group of adventurers, your classic tale, a group of 4 heroes meet up at a tavern, as always. They head on out, do a few quests. These quests are horrible and dangerous, and horrible things are going to happen. People might lose the ability to walk, they might lose an arm, and getting healing magic, much like in some parts of the world, is very expensive to have medical care. And so you might not necessarily be able to just pay to regrow a limb, or maybe the character might not even want to. Maybe they come to terms with this as just a part of who they are, and that's fine as well. And so if you think about it, there would be a lot of people, since monsters are very rampant in the world, there would be a lot of people who have other issues, not just like everybody is completely able-bodied. And so you would have things like ramps going into stores and public buildings. This would be a very common thing, especially when you're dealing with so many different species. You would have things to help with, like reading, like even like arcane books that would help maybe necessarily help read to people, things like that. And I realize that we don't actually have a whole lot of that even in our own games. It's something that once you talk about it, it makes a lot of sense. You actually have to take a step back and say, wow, I have been missing that mark. And you know, maybe it's not necessarily something you thought about because it's something you don't deal with in your day-to-day, and that's okay. But once you start thinking about it, maybe then it's time to start introducing a bit of that flavor into your world. And you know what? It might even make some of your players feel more comfortable, or new players joining in might feel more comfortable. Remember, when your players come forward to you as a DM, it is your responsibility. And I know the DMs already have a multitude of responsibilities, but it is your responsibility to work with them and help them feel comfortable, feel safe, and be able to explore these parts of their character, as long as it's not harming anyone else at the table. And I think that's definitely an important thing to to take away for your games at home. You know, and I know there's a lot of work that's often put into games. DMs spend hours and hours and hours building their worlds, adventures, those damn NPCs that the party seems to drag around. But just think about adding that diversity and ability into your game. Because I honestly think that you might actually be pleasantly surprised at some of the very creative things that you can come up with that really bring your world to life. Travelers, as you know, things are still very difficult out there, especially in the United States. We see our neighbors to the south going through quite a bit, and it breaks our heart every day. The Black Lives Matter movement is still happening. I feel like that's important to say, and often we have to say it many times to other people. But this movement's still happening. People are still marching. You don't see it in the news as much. You don't see it on your social media feeds as much because, well, the news likes to sensationalize things, and when something isn't that super big and wowing, or people aren't dying, or things like that, like at that moment in time, then the news will often forget about it and move on to the next thing. But understand that these things are still happening. This human rights movement is still going, and it is still just as important as it was 2 months ago. I know this fades from a lot of people's minds, and there is a global pandemic going on, that's fair, but remember that it is very, very important that we still stand up, that we still lend our voice, that we raise the voice of others in this time. And, you know, you don't have to give money if you don't have it. That's totally fine. Not a lot of us have a ton to give, especially in this day and age. What you can do is help lift voices in the communities that you're part of. Maybe you're a part of different TTRPG communities, or you have other hobbies, and often with Black creators, they feel already ostracized or like a bit of an outsider. So help lift up voices in those communities. Listen, educate yourself. There are so many things that you can find on the internet to help educate yourself on what is going on, what has been happening. And let's face it, there has been centuries where people have had to educate themselves on how to live in a society that values whiteness above other colors of skin. And so it's time for us to learn about the other people in our diverse nations and to stand up with them and support them however we can. One really great resource that actually I found that's been going on for a while now. There are 3 episodes out. It's on Twitch. Head on over to Critical Bard's Twitch. They have a lot of great stuff. They often do a lot of video game streaming. They interview people in the TTRPG community. Like they have a lot of great stuff on their Twitch channel. So you'll find other stuff there. But they have these roundtables called the Black AF Roundtable. And it will help give you an idea. It will help educate you on a lot of things that you didn't know. Honestly, I've watched all 3. I didn't know a lot of these things. It really took me by surprise, and that's sad because it shouldn't have taken me by surprise. I should be aware of these things. That responsibility is on me to educate myself. And so now I try to do better with educating myself and keeping up to date. And I'm not saying you have to really mire yourself down into a lot of the negative things that have been going on, but on the flip side of that, celebrate people's successes. Celebrate Black creators, what they're coming out with, products they have. Help celebrate, because you're going to find a lot of stuff that you like. And I know some of you are thinking,
but it doesn't matter the color of their skin or where they're from. I just like whatever I like.
And that's fair, but unfortunately it does actually matter, because they have to deal with racism, prejudice, systematic racism that is coming towards them and actually limiting their business, making it more difficult for them. So however you can help out, do what you can. Retweet, like, share, talk about it, comment, leave a nice comment, leave a review if you've purchased a product. My God, reviews help. Just, do what you can. And that's what's important. So I know I've been talking for a while. Let's get into this. So once again, this podcast is called A Couple of Characters. It's where they really delve into, because I mean, we all have 100,000 characters that we wanted to play, and there's never enough time or games to play them. So they really delve into some cool like character mechanics, ways you can create different kind of characters that you never even thought about. Like their first episode discusses a lot around warlocks, and they have one where like the warlock really wholeheartedly believed they were a cleric. Is a very interesting concept. But we are going to bring you into this episode. So I hope you enjoy, travelers, and next week we will be coming back with some more ballad for you. I bid you all adieu.
Hello, I'm Quinn.
And I'm Alex.
And we're
A couple of characters.
We discuss topics related to creating characters for role-playing games. And what are we going to talk about on this episode, Alex?
This episode, we're going to talk about an interesting character that is really going to be two characters in one.
What do you mean by that?
We are going to talk about a gnome or goblin or halfling, some sort of small creature that has a friend of the same race, and they tend to stand on one another's shoulders to pretend to be a medium-sized creature.
So it's like the trope of when you got an overcoat and there's a bunch of kids in there, whatever, pretending to be an adult?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, so what inspired you to create this kooky character? Or I guess talk about it.
Yeah, so the inspiration was from the Critical Role podcast. I listen to the podcast version. There's also the Twitch show. But Matthew Mercer had an NPC that was two kobolds pretending to be a medium-sized creature selling potions. So I thought it would be a lot of fun to come up with a backstory as to why these kobolds are acting in this way, or whatever creature type we choose, and then kind of try to stat it out and get the mechanics down for how it would work.
Okay, so are we starting with a background, or are we starting with a class?
Good question. I think we can probably play around with a little bit of both.
Okay.
I'm going to give you my first thought for the background, and then we can go from there.
All right, sounds good. Let's go, or maybe not necessarily background, but backstory.
Right. So one of my thoughts was either if you're doing kobold or goblin, one of these races that are not tending to be in human society or normal like society in a lot of D&D games, then it would make sense if they are pretending to be a human or dwarf or something so that they can blend in more easily.
Basically, it's creatures that you don't normally find in the cities, or they have their own civilizations.
Right.
Okay.
And the other thought I had was if you want to play it as halflings or gnomes, one of these more typical creatures, then we could make it be that maybe they stole something and they're on the run from the law or something like that, where they are trying to hide their identities whenever they're in big cities.
Okay.
I mean, when you're adventuring through the woods in a forest, they're probably not on one another's shoulders and pretending to be a human or dwarf or whatever. But in cities, I feel like this is where it's really going to be happening.
Okay.
Okay, so do you have any ideas to supplement these backstories?
Are they siblings? Are they just friends? Are they cousins?
So I'm going to give an example quick of a situation when a game I played in, we did something like this it turned out to be a lot of fun. So I was playing in a group as a halfling bard, and the party consisted of 4 halflings and a dwarf. So a lot of small people, and 1 dwarf, which is medium in the player's handbook, but they're also kind of small. And we were in the 9 hells, and we were trying to break into a place in the 9 hells. So the halfling bard cast Seeming on the group, and he made the halflings stack up, and he made some of them look like the top halves of bone devils, and some look like the bottom halves of bone devils. And we stacked up. We had the halflings stacked up 2 and 2, and then the dwarf he just made look a little bit bigger.
Okay.
And then they tried to talk their way into the castle. Being a bard, he had pretty good persuasion and deception, so he was the kind of the voice of the party at that point. And later we actually got into a fight, and we kind of broke apart and surrounded these creatures we were fighting, and I just could not stop enjoying the image of this top half of a bone devil over here fighting, and this bottom half of a bone devil over there fighting. It was pretty comical.
I mean, it's pretty hellish if you think about it.
Yeah, so I think that for classes, I think a magic user is gonna be a help in this. If you get disguise self, you can make yourself look like a humanoid or a medium humanoid a little bit better. The bottom person's probably gonna want to have some strength, so maybe a barbarian or a fighter.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think maybe let's...
So I have one thought is, because you also want the person on top to be kind of dexterous. What if you had
True.
The top person is either a bard or a rogue, and the rogue is an arcane trickster?
Yeah,
So that they
is
have
a good
some disguising magic.
Yeah, that is a good idea as well. Okay, yeah, let's go with that. So let's go with Arcane Trickster for now.
Okay.
And then if you are playing at home and want to make this character, you go ahead and choose Bard or Wizard or whatever you want. And then for the bottom creature, what are you thinking? We got Fighter, Barbarian, one of those two?
I would go
Or maybe-
fighter, barbarian, or monk.
Or, you could do Paladin as well. They're typically pretty strong.
Yes, they are usually pretty beefy.
I think that for our purposes, let's just go Barbarian for now. And then at home, if you want to change it up, that's fine.
Okay.
Mainly because Barbarians get that advantage on strength checks when they're raging. So if you're in the middle of a fight and you're...
So I have a question about that. Well, I have 2 questions. A comment and a question. The comment is barbarians get faster, which is great when you're a little creature. You can speed up, get some faster movement, which is great when you're trying to pretend to be something bigger. Now, I have a question about raging. So you have to be doing a melee attack, or I guess any attack, to keep your rage. How are you going to swing the keeping the thing? Or you have to take damage.
Right.
Also, how are they going to keep the person on top of them while they're raging?
Right. These are problems you're definitely going to run into. So I think we should talk a little bit about the mechanics of actually making the character right here. I know we're into the classes a little bit, but one thing to note is if you are trying to play this character, your dungeon master might say, hey, you can't play 2 creatures because that's not how D&D works. And so you might have to team up with a friend, and one of you is the halfling on top, one of you is the halfling on bottom. Or if your DM wants to try to work with you, I think you would end up multi-classing and kind of having 1 character sheet for stacked up version of the creature, and then 2 maybe lower level character sheets for if you break apart. So, for example, if you're playing a barbarian rogue mix and the fight starts and you want to be controlling the stacked up version, then you would probably have a little bit lower dex score for the person on bottom trying to maintain this stacked pile but, you might be okay for some other stats.
Oh, this is just very complicated.
So are you voting for the version where you play with a friend? I think that's definitely the less complicated version.
Yes, I think that you're going to be less bogged down in all of those complex rules, which can take away from the fun.
True. So I think for this character, you actually will be two characters, and by you, I mean your friend and you will each be one.
All right, I'm liking this.
Okay, so then I think the problems that you bring up are good points, but once you've started fighting, the facade of being two people is probably going to be less important, depending on the situation. So it's possible the person on top might hop off and start attacking on their own, whereas the person on bottom can then rage and make their attacks and maintain that rage.
Okay, yes, this makes sense. I was just talking about how you said that while the person is raging, they have advantage on the strength checks to keep a hold of their buddy on top. And it's not very practical, because they're going to lose their rage, probably.
It's possible. But yeah, I think let's go back into the story, though. Why are these two kind of doing this? Because I think that the idea is there, but we need to rationalize why they are hiding.
They're on the run from the circus that they worked for.
Okay.
And one is the strong man.
Yep.
And the other one...
Or woman.
Yes. And the other one was some sort of acrobat or...
Like the trapeze artist.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they stole something from the ringmaster, whoever is in charge of this show.
Oh, I was thinking that the circus got in trouble with the law in some city, maybe, and the circus got attacked, and the trapeze artist's partner got killed in the attack, and these two fled.
Okay.
But they realized that they might still be known because a lot of people saw the circus, so that's why they...
That's true. Okay, I like this.
So I think that's a decent starting point. I like the circus aspect because it really enhances the strong man is obviously going to be able to carry the trapeze artist and...
Right, exactly. It made make sense that, they're proficient in athletics, so they're really good at doing strong things.
Yeah. But what is the goal, maybe? Is it the goal kind of to find out the mystery of why the circus was attacked? Maybe the ringleader was behind something and they are trying to solve a mystery of why did the circus get attacked when it did?
I think that is probably what they're trying to do, is figure out why were we attacked and bring whoever did it to justice, because, their friends got killed.
Yeah. I think that's a good idea. Okay. So I like the way this is shaking out. And are we doing gnomes or halflings or one of each? Doesn't really matter. I mean, that's up to you at home. Whatever you want to play.
It doesn't matter, but we can just pick one.
Well, just for the sake of argument, say halfling.
Sounds good. The strong person is a stout halfling. And the
Tumbler, trapeze artist,
is a lightfoot halfling.
Okay. Yeah, that gives you a little extra charisma there for the Lightfoot. And a little extra con for the barbarian. I like those choices.
Yes.
Yeah, so I think this is shaking out to be a pretty good character idea for these two. I'm not sure what else we need to say.
I don't think there's really anything else to say because we haven't played this before.
Yeah, I guess we will say that. We have not played this character or pair of characters, but I think it would be a fun idea.
Yeah, I agree.
And definitely the Tumbler could be a bard or a monk or a rogue. I think probably you want to go bard or rogue because you do want that charisma. You could make a monk with high charisma, but it's not very typical. But this podcast is about not doing the thing that's typical, so you do a monk if you want to.
Yeah, the reason we like the bard and the rogue is for the illusion magic.
Yes.
And I don't think a wizard would be performing in a circus because wizards are all about studying. So I don't think a wizard makes sense.
That's true. I think a barbarian and a rogue make a lot of sense in a circus, as does a bard in a circus.
Yeah.
So, and if you're starting out at level 1, it definitely makes sense that maybe they're not quite a barbarian and a rogue when the story takes place, but once you start adventuring, you develop those tools that you get right away.
Exactly.
So, to wrap this character back up,
characters.
Yes. What we did was we have a barbarian that's a stout halfling. On the bottom, he was the strong man of the circus, and the circus got attacked. And the trapeze artist or tumbler, their partner in crime, if they're a trapeze artist, there's usually
Well, not really in crime, but
in circus crimes.
yes.
Circus crimes.
Okay.
They were killed or somehow taken out of the picture. So this person teamed up with the strongman. These two are the only two that escaped. I think it probably makes the most sense, unless maybe some of the other party members want to join in on this backstory with you, and you could have a couple more people be part of the story.
That's true.
So we got a stout halfling barbarian on the bottom, a lightfoot halfling bard or rogue on the top, and we're treating them as two different character sheets with two different players. But if you want to try to make things more complicated, you can try to do it as one and then kind of make your life a little more miserable. I think definitely if you do that, make them the same race so that your racial bonuses are just static.
Yes. That's great for that one. But
Yes.
you said you had another idea that you had heard or seen or whatever.
Yeah, so there's another idea like this. It's not quite a halfling stack up, but this idea came from my friends Eric and Adam, who talked about playing these two characters together, but I don't think they ever had a chance because Eric was always being our dungeon master.
Okay.
If you had the person on the bottom be a druid, and when they beast shape, they shape into a mount, and the person on top could play a cavalier from Xanthar's Guide.
Okay.
And they would be mounted on the druid. And I think that this could be a fun combination as well.
Okay, yes.
So if we did this version, what should our story be? Why are this druid and this cavalier hanging out together, and why is the druid fine with just being this person's mount?
That was exactly what I was going to ask you. So, one idea is we've got somebody in the army. That would be our cavalier.
Makes sense.
And they get separated from their
troop or
whatever.
Unit.
Yeah, they get separated from their people. And they encounter this druid. And maybe the druid is a criminal on the run. And the cavalier's horse
is wounded,
has to be put down.
I think maybe even the cavalier himself or herself is wounded, and the druid heals them back to health.
Okay.
That kind of gives them that bond that...
Yes. But my reason for them being on the run is that if the druid, or, they were wrongfully accused.
Right, but I think, say that...
And that's why they stay as a horse.
Yeah, I think that this makes sense. Say the druid was wrongfully accused, and this cavalier goes along with it because the druid saved their life, and they're very grateful. So they say, okay, the druid explains himself maybe when the cavalier comes back to consciousness. And,
right.
And they are okay with this plan.
Okay. So the druid is wrongfully accused. Maybe there's been a lot of weird animal attacks in the area.
Sure.
And they know that they have a druid healer, whatever, locally. And the townspeople suspect that it's the druid doing this. But it's not the druid. It's somebody else who wants to frame the druid. Some enemy of the druid.
So the druid is kind of like a hermit that's close to a town and does healing things for them when they need it.
Exactly. And the army's coming through or whatever, and the townspeople are trying to get the druid arrested.
Trying to convince the army to apprehend the druid.
Yeah, and then a fight ensues, whatever. That's how our cavalier gets injured.
So the druid is the one that hurt him, though? That I'm not sure.
No, the druid isn't the one that hurt him. It's just there was an angry mob in the town.
Oh, okay.
Because they want the druid taken away. And they're like, I don't know.
All right.
I'm trying to think.
I'm trying to rationalize how the druid then gets hurt, though. But maybe the
druid
creature
doesn't get hurt.
Oh, yeah, I meant cavalier. Maybe the creature that is pretending attacks the army. When the army goes out to apprehend the druid for the townsfolk or question them, they send a few soldiers.
Yeah. And
our cavaliers among them. And that group gets attacked by the creature that's been trying to frame the druid.
Yes.
And then the sole survivor is this cavalier that the actual druid heals back to health. And then,
yes.
And then the cavalier's like, hey, that town wants you dead because they are saying that you're doing all these attacks. And the druid's like, well, I think it's time for us to go. Or time for me to go if you want to come along.
Yeah. And the cavaliers was injured and the horse
didn't make it.
Yeah, horse didn't make it. So Cavalier says, hey, you're a druid. Pretend you're my horse and then you can get away.
Right. Yeah, I think that's great. They go back to the army and the cavalier tells the other troops that are left that didn't go with, like, hey, the druid's gone, we're good to go, we helped this town out, and no one is the wiser that he's riding on the druid back to town to have this conversation.
I like this. Now I have another question.
Go for it.
How long can you stay in your beast shape?
So,
is there a time limit, or is it just a hit point, or you choose
to not? It is,
to
for this combo, you would need to have a starting character that was at least second level so that the druid can actually turn into animals, and they can do so for up to 1 hour at second level.
Right. So I feel like the army would figure out pretty quickly if you can only stay a horse for an hour.
Well, I think the cavalier leaves the army after he delivers this message. Like, he says, hey, I saw some stuff back there.
Okay.
I'm grizzled now.
Yeah.
I need to make my own way in this world.
Okay. So, is he a deserter?
He very well could be. I think that might be good for the cavalier. Maybe he realizes
how unethical.
Yeah, this army wasn't what I thought it was going to be. A little gray in the morality scale.
Right.
So he leaves with the druid to try to kind of find his own way or her own way in the story.
All right. I like this. This is good.
Yeah, so to summarize this one, this is just a similar stacking. We're going to put a halfling for the cavalier just so that we can maintain the halfling stack. Well, we'll just make them both halflings, because why not?
Okay.
So we got a halfling druid that's living in a town and helping them out, but a series of attacks near the town have made the townsfolk question whether the druid is helping them or hurting them. We got a halfling cavalier that joins the army and comes upon this town. The townsfolk say, hey, go check out this druid. They've been attacking us. They go check it out. The druid helps them fend off the attack of whatever's pretended to be the druid. Everyone in the little group dies except our main character, the cavalier, and the druid. And the animal probably gets away, right?
Yes, so I was thinking that would be their goal, is they're trying to figure out what was actually attacking the town.
Right, and why it's framing this druid.
Right.
And then we got them starting out at least 2nd level so that the druid can use wild shape. Is it called wild shape?
Yes,
Beach?
it is called wild shape.
All right. And then we have them, they go back to the town, the druid posing as the mount for the cavalier. They tell the army, hey, the druid is gone now, you're good to go. The townsfolk are happy, the army's happy, but the cavalier is not happy. So the druid and the cavalier leave together to find their own adventure.
Yes, so I'm thinking how they leave is Cavalier brings his mount over to wherever they have all of their horses and such, whatever.
Sure.
And then when the grooms are distracted, reverts back to the halfling, just kind of looks like, oh, somebody just around the camp. There are other people around the camp.
Yeah.
And then at night, they escape.
Okay. Yeah, I like that. So I think that's a pretty good pairing.
Yes.
So now if you want to play, and we would again do this one as 2 separate characters. And so if you want to make this pairing or the other pairing, go ahead and let us know how it went.
Yes, we'd love to hear about it.
So speaking of email, let's talk about how people can contact us.
Exactly. You can find more information about our show at acoupleofcharacterspodcast.com. If you have any ideas or feedback or need help creating your next character, you can email us at acoupleofcharacterspod@gmail.com. You can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at ACOC Podcast. We'd like to thank John Began for composing our theme music. If you like what we're doing, please rate and review us on iTunes. And another way to support us is by becoming a Patreon donor. Just search ACOC Podcast.
Yep, and just remember that those links are all on the website, so just remember the website and you got all the info there. Yeah, and thanks for listening, and hopefully we hear back about some people that tried these characters. Maybe in a future episode we can talk about, if we have the chance to play these characters, we can talk about how it went. So far, neither of us have played either of these, but I think it is a solid plan.
Yes.
Keep on rolling. Quit talking when I'm talking, though.